With me now is Housing Secretary Steve Reed to talk about this and other issues. Let's start with Awaab's law that is now coming in. Obviously, the legislation was passed in 2023 when the previous government was in place. It's meant to protect people in social housing. What about the millions in private rented accommodation?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I'm really pleased that this is coming into force today because, Awaab, and you just heard from his father, I spoke to him over the weekend as well. It's such a frightening and shocking case that a 2-year-old child was left in circumstances where he died shortly after his second birthday, and we can't tolerate that. So I'm very, very pleased for the family that their campaign has delivered this now, and other tenants in those circumstances will be able to seek redress within 24 hours when there is a dangerous situation. Of course, it needs to apply to all forms of tenure. So the Renters' Rights Act is a piece of legislation that will receive royal assent shortly. It's already gone through Parliament. Once that happens, we can lay down the guidance behind it, and that will include a timetable for when this will come into force in private rented as well. And I will make sure that is as fast as we can possibly do it, because we want everybody, whatever kind of property they're renting, to have the assurance that what happens to little Awaab cannot happen to anyone else.
Yeah, 1 million children are still thought to live in damp homes. We're also waiting the government's child poverty strategy. You've been saying all the year that's going to be published later in the year. When are we going to see that? When are we going to see more help for millions of children in this country, which, as you said, with Awaab's death is shameful, intolerable. A lot of what children go through in this country is intolerable.
Of course it is. And we'll hear the child poverty strategy. There's only a handful of weeks of the year.
It's almost November.
Left.
So
it's almost November, so you're going to get it very, very soon. And of course, it's very important that comes out. But Awaab's law coming into force today is such an important step. And after the tragedy that the family have gone through, this is a legacy for Awaab and for the family. That means that other parents will not have to experience the horror that family did. And I know from my own casework, a few years ago I had about 5 different cases from a single block relating to damp. Thank goodness nobody died in this way, but the social landlord didn't respond. Now they will be required to by law. That is a huge improvement for people.
I know you say you want to move quickly when it comes to protecting tenants in the private sector from the same things that killed Awaab and put plenty of other people in hospital. Is it the fact that this government seems to be very slow in grasping issues that matter to a lot of people, that is causing voters in Caerphilly to turn their back on you in a Senate by-election? It's causing your own Labour members to not vote for your preferred choice as Deputy Leader, but to go for Lucy Powell. Can't you get a quicker grip on these big issues, ASYLUM being a big one this morning, by the way, that show that you mean business?
Well, first off, Lucy's great. I think she should be a fantastic deputy leader. But the truth is, government isn't an overnight thing.
We know. Phillipson, though, because she's in the cabinet with you. You would have preferred her, right?
Well, I like them both. They're both personal friends. So I'm quite.
Did you vote?
I did, and I voted for Bridget, but I really like Lucy. She's a close personal friend. I've known her for years. They're both fantastic.
But not enough to get your vote.
Well, I would have been happy either way, to be honest.
You could have abstained.
But the point. Well, you've got to vote. I think people should use their vote. You've got to take a choice one way or the other. But I would have been very happy with either outcome, and I am happy with the outcome. I completely understand that people want change immediately. When people voted in July 2024, they knew the country was broken. They want it fixed. They're going to be frustrated because it doesn't happen quickly.
The process of government is slow. To put some things in place that make people feel they're getting value for money from their vote. You've still got a massive majority. Yet you've got West Streeting saying there's a prevailing sense of despair. Isn't that your own doing?
People want to feel change, not just hear about change. But we've already done, you mentioned Wes there, 5 million extra NHS appointments, and we're seeing the waiting lists that were going up exponentially year after year under the Tories starting to come down now. The national minimum wage is putting more money in the pockets of millions of our fellow citizens who are on the lowest wages. People are concerned about ASYLUM, of course. 39,000 people that had no right to be in the country returned. So there is change going on. I'm here today talking about Awaab's law, protecting tenants, social tenants, from the dangers of mould and damp in their homes. So there is change going on.
You say you want to bring that in for private tenants as well. If you brought it in more quickly, you could save billions for the NHS.
That's right. If we could brought it in more quickly, we've got the Renters' Rights Act that we've taken through Parliament. It's completed that journey now. It will get royal assent in due course, and then we lay the guidance and people will start to see the change. I mean, I wish there was a way that you could do all of it on week one after a general election. The truth is you can't. You have to take it through a process in Parliament. You have to allocate the funding in the budget. We have to get the economy growing, but people are starting to see the change they want now. I completely appreciate people's frustration. The country was broken when we were elected. They want to see it fixed. They want to put, fire under our feet, and we feel that. I recognise what people were saying in Caerphilly, but we are delivering change, and I'm here today to talk to you about some of the change that I've delivered in my job.
What would you do to change the Home Office? Because if this report from the Home Affairs Select Committee, and we're going to hear from the chair in about an hour's time, is to be understood, there is vast waste going on in the Home Office, especially when it comes to funding asylum hotels. The cost has more than tripled to £15 billion. Money's being left on the table because it seems like civil servants can't be bothered to claim it back for the taxpayer. And your own Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, says the place isn't fit for purpose. What would you do?
Well, Shabana is working at pace to fix the problems we inherited. Those contracts you're talking about today were, of course, put in place by the previous government. We have inherited them, but we've put in place already additional caseworkers to deal with the number of asylum seekers. We can get them through more quickly. The number of hotels in use is now half what it was at the peak. We need to eliminate it entirely, and we'll do that within the lifetime of this government, but we want to do it as quickly as possible. Shabana, the Home Secretary, I know has been involved in conversations about how you can look at using disused military bases, for instance, instead of hotels, to accommodate people far more cheaply. But it takes time to get your hands on those sites, construct the accommodation, and then move people into it. But we've already saved £1 billion, so it's starting to go down.
The thing is, you wouldn't need to use these at all if you were processing applications more quickly, if there were different ways for applications to be processed, so people could apply when they're not necessarily in this country, when they're not tempted to cross by small boats. Surely that, coming at it from that angle,
but we've got hundreds of additional caseworkers in there dealing with that now. We brought in the one in, one out agreement with France, so we can remove more.
Well, it's one in, one out, one back in again.
We've removed that.
That's not working.
But the point is, you don't want people coming across on boats, so you've got a lot of people who have no right to be here and then have to be removed. We've removed 39,000. If people, as you're saying, were applying outside the country, then those with a right to be here can come in, and those who have no right are kept out. And that is what we're working towards. By increasing the number of caseworkers dealing with applications, we've removed a record number, 39,000 people who have no right to be here since the Parliament began. And the one in, one out system with France is starting to work.
Will we hear when Hadush Kebatu, this man who was released by mistake, apprehended again over the weekend, will we hear when he is sent away from this country? We
will certainly hear, and as I understand, that will happen this week.
Yeah,
and
that's what David Lammy says,
That's what David Lammy says. He's the Justice Secretary. This individual had no right to be in the country in the first place, let alone committing the kind of offences that he committed. And my jaw was on the floor, I'm sure yours was, I'm sure everybody else watching was just as shocked when they saw this individual had been released accidentally. Now, that is the sign.
Well, his jaw was on the floor because he didn't seem to know what to do or where to go.
Absolutely. It wasn't that he made an escape bid, he was released in a way that should not have happened. Now, that is a sign, isn't it, of a broken criminal justice system. But we know that because when we were elected, the prisons were full up. There wasn't room to house people that got custodial sentences in the courts. An absolute shocking situation. And 1/3 of professional staff in the criminal justice system had been got rid of under the previous government. We're having to rebuild it from the bottom up.
I appreciate what you're saying in terms of the inheritance and 14 years of Conservative government. But let's come back to Lucy Powell, now Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, who you didn't vote for. She said in her victory speech, the desire for change is impatient and palpable. Now, what she really means by that is you've had 16 months to deliver some, not all, some tangible change. And voters are saying, get on with it. Where is it? You can't keep pointing to what you inherited, you need to point to what you've done in that 16 months.
Well, Lucy's saying what I just said to you, which is that we all understand voters' frustration, that they want to see change happen faster. As I said, 5 million extra NHS appointments. The state of the NHS was one of the top issues in the general election, if not the top issue in the general election, because waiting lists have gone up and up and up and up.
Yeah.
Now, we've increased funding for the NHS, and we've got 5 million additional appointments, and now we're seeing waiting lists come down. There is change happening.
Just excuse me for a second. If the funding for the NHS is treated in the same way as the funding for asylum hotels and the Home Office, people aren't going to be accountable for it. People are going to be wasteful for it. You're pouring money into a black hole. These things need root and branch reform.
That's right. But you can see by the fact that there are additional appointments and the waiting lists are coming down that funding is working. I'm here today to talk about, well, whatever you want, but Awaab's law.
Appreciate that.
Of course, Awaab's law. There's a change that means that families like Awaab Ishaq's, who had to just watch their child die because of the conditions they were in, that will be fixed.
Legislation that was passed in 2023. I mean,
we're bringing
it's coming in today.
We're bringing it into force. The Renters' Rights Act is about to get royal assent, which means that comes into force as well. That means the end of no-fault evictions.
Yeah.
So we've got millions of people living in rented accommodation in this country who could at any moment just be told by their landlord, sorry, I want that flat back, I'm going to put it out on the market and get more money out of somebody else and you're homeless. Yeah. Not once the Renters' Rights Act comes into force, and that should be within days. So there's a real change that will benefit millions of people up and down our country.
Just before we finish, a quick word on Petrofac, this North Sea oil and gas drilling company. Our city editor, Mark Clymer, was sat there just prior to you coming on, saying it is going into administration. It's made that announcement to the London Stock Exchange, risking 2,000 jobs. And a lot of the mood music around companies such as this is the lack of uncertainty about drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea because of the withholding of licences for this. Is this the government's doing?
Well, the government has said we're not going to break any of the existing contracts that were in place, so they have that certainty, and that means North Sea oil drilling will go on for years into the future. But we need to transition our economy away from fossil fuel towards clean energy because we can generate more of it ourselves rather than.
But this isn't the way to do that, is it? You wouldn't want to see this
on foreign dictators like Vladimir Putin. No one wants to see companies go under. But given that drilling for North Sea oil is going to go on for years into the future, I don't know what other circumstances that company is facing. But they have certainty about what's going to happen. No existing contracts are being broken, and drilling will continue for years to come.
Steve Reed, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.